So Wuthering Waves has been out for a couple days now, and the developers have released a lot of different updates to improve performance on PC and on mobile as well. Now, today I'll be playing on the Galaxy S23. Usually that's the device that I'm playing on. My PC for some reason crashes the game right from the very start. I think that's one of the issues that's still ongoing, but this thing has been working really well, and I just want to show you the internal stuff on the game. Now, I'll be playing on the default settings. I won't be turning off the Galaxy optimizing service, and just so you see the screen better, I will put the device screen on the right side of the screen here. Now, as you can see, this is a 8 Gen 2. The S23 is, I think, one of the better Samsung devices in the last couple of years, since it is exclusively Snapdragon. There is no Exynos, which thank God it's not a Exynos. I've heard that chip doesn't run the game that well. I already mentioned the Galaxy optimizing service. No, it will be off, and if you want best performance, you should definitely enable this, but it will cause heating and it will basically obviously shorten the battery life. But when I usually play with this option enabled, and I have flat 60 frames per second while playing. It doesn't have any drops while this is enabled. But I'll be playing while this is turned off, so just to, show you the average performance that you can expect from the device. Now, this does have different options. It has default options, but none of these options here will give better performance than when you disable the optimized service. When you disable the optimizing service, or when you enable the alternative performance profile, the device will use Qualcomm's default performance profile, and it will not use Samsung's profile. We all know that the Galaxy optimizing service kills frame rate. How much will it affect the frame rate in this game? Well, we will find that out. Now, I'll be using several different monitors that will show the internal temperature of the GPU. We'll also see the CPU temperature, as well as the battery, the GPU utilization, frequency, and things like that. This is something that you probably will not see on a lot of tests, since for some reason no one wants to show the internal happenings of the device while running the game. And I like to keep things accurate as possible. I use Simple System Monitor, a really amazing application, and it shows literally everything. Now, this is the GPU temperature, the internal temperature. This is the battery temperature. This is going to be... You also have RAM if you like. I think I'll also keep this up as well. The GPU will show the utilization. The frequency is bugged for some reason, and I'll have a different monitor that will show the accurate frequency. The maximum frequency is 719 MHz. That's full speed. And also have the disk activity, but we won't be needing that. So here are the monitors that I'll be using while playing the game. Very useful, and they're very accurate to 100%. I've been using it for years. And this little application here does show the CPU frequencies, the GPU frequency, and the GPU utilization. Also very nice to have. You also can adjust the options in this application. You can have different profiles as well. I like to use the vertical one, since it has every single stat available. You can also customize it even more if you like. You have really a lot of options, and I like to use both applications at the same time, since both applications give really accurate stats. Now, You can also, I mean, adjust the current, which will show you how much battery is being used, which can be converted to how many watts this is using. The GPU on this uses at maximum 8 watts, the CPU at maximum 5 watts. I can tell you from my experience so far, it does use over 9 watts combined while running the game, although that's going to be saved for a different test when I disable the Galaxy optimizing service. So, I covered the applications, and there is one more thing that I almost forgot. I'll be using the refresh rate 120 Hz adaptive, because 60 Hz is really bad. I cannot get used to 60 Hz anymore. I use natural. The colors of the screen are natural. So one more important little thing that you will see on the start of the test here: GPU watch. Now I need to update this in order to give more accurate stats, but it does give everything that I need. I'll be using this to see what renderer the game is using. We all know that Vulkan's been out. Vulkan is definitely much better than OpenGL. Everything uses Vulkan nowadays. Everything supports Vulkan since Android 7.0. And Vulkan, by default, from my experience, is just much better for games. Now, Wuthering Waves is running in OpenGL, which is one of the, I would say, main reasons why a lot of devices will see performance issues. OpenGL in some cases uses 1 core, in some other cases uses up to 4 cores. Vulkan would use all 8 cores, and Vulkan would allocate workload to the GPU as well as making the whole CPU work with the game, which would reduce the heat and would definitely improve performance. But on this game, at least at the moment, seems like there is no Vulkan support, which is kind of unfortunate, since every single game that I tested out with Vulkan just runs flawlessly. There's no lag, nothing. And that was kind of what disappointed me with Wuthering Waves. I really expected them to use Vulkan, but I still do get 60 when I disable Galaxy optimizing service, so I'm not going to complain too much about that, but adding Vulkan support would definitely solve a lot of performance struggles on a lot of devices. Would also reduce heat, since the workload will be allocated equally to all the 8 cores or 10 cores. I mean, if you have an Exynos device, they have up to 10 cores now, which is kind of interesting to think about. But with Galaxy optimizing service, about 48, 50, 55 frames per second, not bad, since usually the Galaxy optimizing service knows to completely cripple the frame rate. But the first part is mainly focused here. I'm focusing more on the renderer. Uses OpenGL. It runs in 1080p, which is actually really good. I actually expected the game to be in lower resolution, but it runs in 1080p. It does have FSR support, which does enhance the resolution, so it could be rendered at lower resolution and then upscale to 1080p, which I believe is what's happening here, which does improve performance and I guess save battery. But overall, the settings, I'll show the settings in a moment here. Okay, now time to start with the more serious test. So we have seen the resolution, we have seen the renderer, it's OpenGL and runs in 1080p, which is the device's resolution here that I have. So the CPU, now the CPU temperature will be a bit high because it renders the little window in 120 frames per second and also has the game, so kind of weird how it works. But the 98, I mean 95, 86 degrees Celsius is the CPU, which is, when I think about it now, it's a bit scary to see those temperatures, but that's what's actually happening under the hood of the device. So where shall we go? Let's see, let's see, let's see. Well, let me go and yeet a Tacit Field. I already played, I already completely exhausted the stamina here, so I guess I'll just have to use some Mastery to claim the rewards, but let's see how much the Galaxy Optimizing Service will ruin the experience. Now, I say ruin the experience. I mean, it's still playable. I personally just don't like when it has like big dips in the frame rate. But overall, this seems stable. Again, when I have the optimizing service disabled, or when I have the alternate performance profile enabled, it's flawless 60 FPS. Does seem to, just get toasty, but I don't really worry much about heat since I do cool the device. GPU temperature 72, which is a little bit lower than what I see when the Galaxy Optimizing Service is disabled, or should I say enabled. Now the frequency is not that high. It runs at default 300-400 MHz, which is about 50% of the total load, so you definitely will have no issues with the graphics on the 8 Gen 2. On the 8 Gen 3 will run also really good. 8 Gen 1 will also run really fine. Well, the 8 Plus Gen 1, since the classic 8 Gen 1 is kind of a nuclear reactor, and yeah, that is going to overheat very quickly. Snapdragon 870 should also be fine when it comes to the GPU performance, since it doesn't really max it out, which is good. So the only thing that the developers would have to do here is to enable Vulkan support, and that would definitely improve the frame rate a lot. It does also make the GPU work a bit harder, and it would improve the performance even more. Now, I play the game here on maximum settings. That's currently available, and so far it's decent. I actually expected this to drop like below 20, below 30 with the Galaxy Optimizing Service being currently enabled. And you can see how the game is using at most 3 to 5 cores. Usually it does go with the big cores. It has 5 big cores, 1 very big core, and 4 medium-sized cores, but I kind of count them all as big cores since they're big cores on the architecture, and 3 small ones. Okay, well, it's relatively smooth. I mean, again, he uses the Galaxy Optimizing Service, which is obviously limiting performance. Not necessarily a bad thing, since, well, let me tell you, the Qualcomm's default knows to run really warm. I don't know what they have been thinking, really. It's still kind of funny when I bought this device and when I was testing out for the first time on other games. I was kind of shocked when I saw that it maintains like 80-85 degrees Celsius with no big deal. So maybe it's just made to work at those temperatures. I would not be surprised if that's the case. Let's do some boss battles. No, I have been running the bosses in this game. It's been the grind is actually, not gonna lie, but the grind is actually impressive. However, I don't really mind because, and when I say impressive, I mean you have to like farm a lot of materials for echoes, for characters. I have like a bunch of them already, so have to kind of max them out. And you don't have enough like stamina in a day to finish one character per day. You have to like, you really have to explore a lot, which I did, which I do. That's why I have so much stuff here. Now when you're fighting, it's very interesting to note, but when you're fighting the boss, now you can see the frequency is a bit higher than usual, but at the same time it doesn't really hit full speed, which is again very interesting. However, the CPU is rolling. That thing is, you can see the CPU 3 to 6. They are all running almost at full speed all the time. Those are the 5 medium size, or as I call them, the big cores. You have the X3 core, which is core number 8, which doesn't run that much, but it is still being used. Overall, very interesting. The frame has been constantly over 40, 45, which honestly is really good considering that this is the Galaxy Optimized servers that we're talking about. Even if it does say performance, when you set the performance profile to performance, it does kind of, you know, push it a little bit, but it doesn't really let it full speed. It limits it. It limits how much power it's using. It limits how much heat output you have. When you disable that, it runs full power, and there is honestly a big difference between having the optimizing service enabled and disabled. Let's do the tower a little bit. Now the tower should be running a little bit smoother. It's a smaller area, but still fairly happy with how this worked so far. Now next time in the next video I'll be turning off the optimized service, and I will also be using cooling, since let me tell you, I don't trust I don't really trust the temperature that I'm seeing when I have that disabled. And I think this is like for every single Qualcomm chipset. I also love how no one really mentions the internal temperatures, because that's what matters. The internal stuff matters more than the exterior stuff. I mean, the phone is cold to the touch right now. It doesn't have any, you know, doesn't feel warm at all. But on the internal side of things, yeah, that's where the things are toasty. And again, I've had this thing for like 7-8 months now, and no issues with its heating. So I guess it just made to work with those temperatures, which again is something that I personally don't really like, but if it works, I guess. I'm not going to complain at all about that. Now with all these windows, it is definitely a little bit more difficult to play, but I'll manage. My Rover is stronger than my other characters, somehow. I don't know how I managed to do that, but I did. Okay, well, decent performance here as well. And I'll just save that for now. Let's go and run around in open world. Now there are some scenes where the frame rate is locked to 30 FPS. Cutscenes are locked in 30 FPS. The map is locked in 30 FPS. The upgrade screen where you upgrade the characters, when you change the characters, it's also locked in 30 FPS. So there are some areas where the frame rate is locked for some reason. I don't know why. I guess for cutscenes they did lock to 30 FPS in order to save battery. That's my initial thought. I think they did that to, you know, save battery. It's actually kind of a smart thing, or maybe it's by accident, who knows. Let me go and travel to a different area, but overall the game does run about the same everywhere. There are some areas where you will see just a little bit increased heat, but the frame rate would be about the same. So, this is basically the performance on a Samsung device. Now, other devices with 8 Gen 2 chipsets will definitely run with the default stats, since every single manufacturer has a slightly different software and they all have slightly different ways of how they handle workload. In this case, Samsung has like technically has 4 or 5 different modes, but I kind of classify them as 2, and that's mainly with the Galaxy Optimizing or the Game Optimizing Service. I call it Galaxy Optimizing Service, but it's Game Optimizing Service. That's what Samsung is using. But if you have a different 8 Gen 2 device, this will definitely run much smoother out of the box by default. You don't have to tamper with it at all. Xiaomi devices, Poco devices run this much better than a Samsung device would. The only way to kind of get the same performance on a Samsung device would be to use the alternate game performance profile, which thankfully Samsung did give us to, you know, have the option to turn it on and off. At one point in the past you were not able to do that, and you were stuck with the default Optimized Service performance, which was bad in the past, but thankfully that's a very good thing that Samsung did. They changed that to be allowed to be turned on and off in order to improve performance, and honestly it does improve performance a lot. Well then, overall I'm personally happy. You will see a crazy performance increase in the next video when I use the alternate game performance. It will be flat 60 FPS, a little spoiler, but yeah, you can expect flawless performance with that. So, and one important thing that barely anyone also shows that I'm about to show you, it's the RAM usage. Now, this game is using on average about 2.3, 2.5 gigabytes of RAM. In some instances, it can go up to about 3.5. That's the highest that I've personally ever seen. 3.5 is the highest that I've seen. And let me just quickly show you where you can actually look at the usage of any application's RAM. So you go to the memory in the developer options, and it should be the first one, and you go maximum usage, click here, and it will sort it, and here we go. Wuthering Waves, in this case 2.4 gigabytes was the maximum usage. Now, depending on the map, it can go up to 3.5, so 2.2, 2.3, 2.4 is about the average. The highest I've seen was 3.5, so that's how much RAM you can expect the game to use, which is honestly pretty good, pretty fine. Not too bad. I've seen other games use up to 5. Asterix, for example, used up to 5 gigabytes of RAM, which is kind of wild to think about, but that's a different game. And well, with that being said, that would be it for this little test. This was the Galaxy S23 with the game optimizing service enabled. That was the performance in Wuthering Waves. Acceptable. It can be pushed harder, and I will show you how to do that next time when I actually have to wait for the cooler to be prepared. You will laugh when you see the cooler. I have a very hilarious way to keep my devices cool, and you will see that next time. But with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed. Hope that I could help. Hope that this was helpful. If you would like to support me, feel free to like and subscribe. And with that being said, stay safe. As always, I'll see you next time.